or afternoon, depending where you're tuning in from. Welcome to today's session. My name is Mindy. I'm going to be your moderator today. So I'll be here to support both you and our presenters. If there's any technical issues or any issues that come up, you can direct message me in the chat. Just look for moderator Mindy. I'll be able to assist you from there. Today's session is Transform Your Teaching or Coaching Practice with TeachFX. And presenting is Ashley Yazarlu and Roseo Moki.
Perfect. Yeah, so hi, thanks for joining us, everyone. We're so happy to have you here this morning. Roseo is actually on the East Coast, so it's afternoon where she's at. But thanks for coming. We're going to be using Pear Deck today. And Roseo and I will keep popping the link into the chat. So if you can go ahead and join or go to joinpd.com and type in the code or click the link that is in the chat. My name is Ashley Yazarlu. I am one of the EdTech TOSAs in Hemet Unified School District. And here with me today is Roseo Moki from TeachFX. And she's going to help me kind of explain why TeachFX is an amazing tool for you as a teacher or a coach. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know we don't have everyone in the Pear Deck yet, but you can keep joining. The join code is in that top corner. And Roseo will keep popping it into the chat as needed. All right, so first, we want to know who's in the room today. If you can let us know what your role is. Are you a teacher, elementary or secondary? Are you an instructional coach? Are you an administrator? Or do you have another role within your organization? So I'm just going to display the results, and as you're logging in and coming in, and I see some of you are typing it in the chat. If you're in the Pear Deck, you should be able to type directly in and choose an option so we can kind of see this graph and what it looks like, who's in the room. We've got a lot of secondary teachers in here so far, some elementary. We've got some coaches, a coach and an other. If you were choosing an other, can you type in the chat in the Zoom what you do? What is your role? Looks like we have a good mix, Roseo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, more coming in, more people are joining. I see we have 18 people in the meeting and 16 responses so far. So that's mostly everybody here. So I think we're good to go. Okay, so it's good to see you all here today, and thank you for joining us. Again, this is going to be geared mostly towards teachers and coaches. And we're going to be talking about the TeachFX app and what it can do to enhance your instructional practice or your coaching practice. So our objective today, again, we're learning how to use this tool called TeachFX to enhance your teaching and coaching practice. So I'm going to let Roseo take over to walk you through a little activity.
Sure. So thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Roseo. I'm a former middle school science teacher. I taught in Southeast LA, and now I'm on the partnerships team at TeachFX, and just super grateful to be here and present with Ashley. And I thought I'd start us off with a little bit of an activity. So here are 4 words that we often see in education, and I would like you to arrange them from negative to positive based on your understanding of these words. So pretty vague, pretty general. I just want to kind of get us thinking about these words and how you might arrange them. So Ashley, I don't know how much time, should I start a timer or?
No, I think we're good, like a minute or two. They have, you should be able to draw on your screen. So if you can connect the words to the boxes that you think they belong to, from the most negative to positive being on the bottom, and each person will have their own screen. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through to see what we're thinking here. Interesting. This one's interesting, Rosario.
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay.
Ooh, we have
So
someone.
someone typing. That's awesome. You can type if you choose to, or use the lines. And also you can change the color if you'd like to change colors. All right. So this person thinks analyzing is the most negative, reflecting is the most positive. Got another reflection here as a positive, but thinking being the most negative. So I like how this person color coded, studying being the most negative. All right. Okay, I'm going to hide it and go ahead and click to the next one.
Okay, so now I want you all to think about the same arrangement. And I want you to think about it with this question in mind. Which makes the most impact on student growth? Would you change your arrangement if you knew that I was speaking specifically about typical data analysis that a teacher does? So would love for you to see if you change your answers or your arrangement.
Right, so which one has the most impact on student growth? And that would be whatever you're putting in blue. So I think this one was similar to one of the ones we saw before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like this person's doing some color coordinating, so I'll come back to that one.
I'm seeing a lot of reflect there in the positive.
Mm-hmm. So this one is analyze, maybe. A lot of reflect. I like how a lot of them are saying think, study, analyze, and then reflect going to the bottom. So some similar thought processes going on in this room of educators today. All right.
Awesome. So thank you for, engaging in that quick little activity. There's really no wrong or right answer here. I think that at TeachFX, one of the things we want to encourage teachers to do is a lot of teacher reflection. So we know that you first did this thinking about it, how you feel and, kind of your first thoughts about the words, and then kind of shifted gears and thinking about it in terms of teacher practice and how that it impacts student growth. And one thing that we know is most data analysis talks are after an assessment for students. And at TeachFX, we really want you to start thinking about progress monitoring and reflection before you ever give students an exam or some sort of assessment. So that way you should already know how the assessment may go because you've given, the opportunity to really have students engage orally and reflect on your teacher practice and how that all panned out. So thank you for engaging in that.
All right.
So now I wanted to ask this question and see what you all think. And just take your best guess, but what do you think is an activity that's done by most teachers in the US, but has almost no evidence of effectiveness in raising student test scores? And I dropped a little hint there that educators spend over 40 hours a year outside of class engaged in this activity. So give your best guess.
Yeah, so we're seeing some guesses come in. We've got spelling tests and homework, grading. Another homework answer, looking at student assessment data, grading, homework. I'm seeing a trend here.
Yes.
Grading. More grading, more grading. All right. So should I reveal?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and reveal. So the answer is analyzing student assessment data. So there's lots of research out there that says that this is actually largely ineffective, and yet it's something that a lot of educators do. So understanding students' weaknesses is only useful if it changes practice. And to this date, there's almost no evidence that actually suggests that this changes student outcomes. So focusing on the problem has likely distracted us from focusing on the solution.
Yeah, and that
So-
resource is linked there if you want to look back at it.
Yes. So one thing that we really try to do at Teach Effects is looking at the inputs and what's happening in the classroom rather than the outputs or that student assessment data.
All right. So another question for you. In your average 50-minute class period, how many minutes would you guess that students spend engaging in student-led academic talk? And again, this is just thinking about your own teaching practice when you're in the classroom and you have a group of kids, hypothetically, for about 50 minutes. How many minutes would you guess that your students are engaging in student-led academic talk? And so I see the responses are coming in. We think less than 5 to 10. Some people are saying they're spending 20 to 30 minutes, another 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. So gonna give you a little story time. This is me circa 2014-ish with a team of teachers that I worked with in South Central Los Angeles at John Muir Middle School. I was an 8th grade language arts teacher there. And this was the first time that I had a truly effective instructional coaching experience with a colleague. My instructional coach was Tyson Evans, and he was a fellow science teacher on the team, but part of his role was to be out of the classroom, helping support teachers throughout the workday. And so I had been teaching for a year or two in South LA, and I was struggling. Behavior management and classroom management was definitely a challenge. And I was experiencing working with students who were really not motivated. And I had a really hard time like engaging them and getting them, participating and wanting to participate in the hard work of learning in my class. And so Tyson came in as my instructional coach, and him and being partnered with some of the other teachers on this team really helped me to transform my practice. But I will remember one specific coaching experience that stands out. And we were talking about getting the students talking in class. The students wanted to talk about everything and anything other than what I was asking them to talk about in my class. And he, taught me some strategies about how to structure the academic talk in my class and tools that I could provide to them. But he really focused on the opportunity. And so one day he came in and I had pre-planned a lesson, and I gave the students this reading that they were going to discuss with each other. And then I gave them some tools and sent them on their way to engage in this conversation. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually timing the amount of time that I gave students to talk. And I was shocked because it was a whopping 30 seconds when I had my reflective conversation with him. He asked me, how long do you think you gave your students time to talk? And I said, like 3 to 5 minutes. They were probably talking with their groups. And he was like, no, they spoke for 30 seconds. I was like, I talked the entire 50 minutes. Like I did all of the talking the entire class period. And that was a huge revelatory moment for me in understanding that I needed to step back from what I was doing and allow my students to engage in the process of academic conversation. And it had to do a lot with releasing the control. But at that time, I didn't have an app like TeachFX that really could break it down for me. This was the one moment that another human told me this is what's happening. And so it was eye-opening. So I didn't necessarily love what I was hearing at the time, but I needed to hear it. So TeachFX has this breakdown that they call the magic of 30-30-30. And they did some research and found that teachers with high achieving students spend about 12 and a half fewer minutes talking each class period than teachers of low achieving students. And we know that this is an ideal, right? If in a 50-minute class period, having the teacher talk for about 15 minutes, students talk for about 15, have the students engaged in group talk for 15, and then maybe that silence or that wait time for 5 minutes. We know that that's an ideal, right? It's not going to happen perfectly like that every day. But to what extent do you agree that this 30-30-30-10 talk breakdown is a good target to shoot for? I think, Riseo, did you have anything you wanted to add about that 30-30 breakdown?
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to add is that, of course, like you said, this is not going to be true for every class. Some classes you might have a lot more direct, heavy instruction, and so this is just kind of a loose baseline that we've given at TeachFX. And remarkably, it's actually something that we've observed in our TeachFX pilots. And we've seen that teachers who did use TeachFX improved their talk ratios by about the same amount, 12.6 minutes per class.
That's awesome. So I want to see, what are we thinking here? Do we agree? And everybody is saying that they are agreeing. And I think it's a good ideal to shoot for, but we know based on our own classroom experience that there are some challenges or some barriers that might come from time to time that prevent us from achieving this 30-30-30-10 talk ratio. So we know that this is not going to happen every day all the time, but we got to try to shoot for it. So how can we determine if we're achieving that ratio? And this is where the TeachFX app comes in. So TeachFX is an app that empowers teachers with job embedded feedback on classroom equity, student engagement, and essential teaching practices. And you can use the app to record audio of your class and get insights into what's happening in your classroom. I'm gonna go ahead.
For those who have never seen TeachFX, this is essentially what a teacher gets either on their phone or laptop after they choose to record one of their classes. They record, let's say tomorrow, and then shortly after they finish the recording, they get this report. And they're able to get this kind of data that shows them, hey, here are the talk ratios of how much a teacher spoke versus students spoke. We get a visualization of these word clouds that actually represent the academic vocabulary, not just what words were used, but actually the distinction between the teacher versus the student vocabulary used. And you can imagine the actionable, next steps that teachers could go forward with after that. And we also present this timeline that Derek had talked about that actually reveals specific instances of things like wait time or the types of questions being asked. So,
all right, I'm going to let Riseo dive in a little deeper here with TeachFX.
Yeah, so as my colleague Joseph, who was featured in the video, said, there's a lot of different insights that you can get by using the app, such as how much students and teachers spoke, how you can get a keyword analysis on looking at academic language from both student and teacher. So really seeing if you're modeling the language that you want your students to use. It shows the distinction between like I said, the teacher and student vocabulary, use of wait time or think time, how many open-ended questions you asked that got students talking the most. And within the class report, you can actually click on those moments and listen to yourself asking the questions and listening to students responding back. And so you can really use that to gauge future lessons if you want to include those questions in future in future lessons. So
Yeah, I'm going to click over to the TeachFX app. I'm logged into my account right now, and they do have some demo lessons already loaded in there, so you can kind of see what it looks like. But this is basically what the analysis would look like after you do a class recording. Literally, all you do is just put your phone or your device out in the room and hit record and leave it alone. And then at the end, it's going to upload that report. It may take a little bit to upload, but once it uploads, you'll be able to see a full analysis of your class and what the talk ratios look like, the visualization. You can get a transcript of what was said by students and you. And then, like she said, you can listen back to key moments in the recording.
A stands for the author or authority. Okay.
and then
Or no?
one thing.
I think the com is
I-
company,
Oh,
maybe. I forget.
Okay,
One
so
thing I'll
that's just an
add-
idea.
Ashley, one thing I'll add is you can also set it up so that you can set a time or like a class period that you want to record every day. So if you forget, like I did, so in certain instances to press record, you can set that up as well.
Yeah, so it gives you, as you can see, it gives you a whole lot of data for you to take a look at and reflect on your classroom instruction. How much you're talking, how much you're building on student contributions, the questions you asked, and then you can listen back to the questions. It's just really great. It gives so much information. Feedback, like we said earlier, it's like an instructional coach can give you, except without the coach. I am an instructional coach now, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how I use this with some of the teachers I was coaching this past year.
Yeah, so we try to make it as simple to use as possible. We know teachers don't have a lot of time, and so it's literally just a one-click start and stop button. And so it does all the work for you, and then it comes packaged in this nice little report afterwards.
This is kind of what I showed you on the website a second ago, some of the insights that you can get with questioning, wait time, equity of voice, etc. The
Awesome.
word cloud free feature is also great too. And I have a little blurb about how one of the teachers actually used this with their students afterwards, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, and then I think the most important thing that we like to say at TeachFX is all this data is private to the teacher. So admin can't see it. There's no fear of being evaluated or judged, like when your admin might come and observe you in a classroom. And so the whole idea is to really empower teachers to reflect on their practice on their own and just create more moments for reflection. And a teacher can delete a class at any time, but a teacher can also share a report. And so Ashley's gonna go into that about how she used this as a coaching tool and had her teachers share reports with her.
Yeah, so we're wondering about your questions. So if you have questions, things you're pondering about TeachFX, go ahead and type your questions into the chat. We'll or not the chat, the Pear Deck chat, and we'll answer any that pop up or let you know if we need to get back to you on any question you may have. I see a question came through. Is it completely free? No, it is not completely free. You get 2 free recordings.
Mhm.
So I'm going to explain in a little bit how I had my teachers use those 2 free recordings strategically. They do have partnerships that you can get with your district, and probably Rosario might want to go into more detail about that.
Yeah, so and there will be a QR code at the end of this presentation so that you can sign up and get your 2 free recordings. But normally, if we have a teacher who's super interested, we want to try to see if we can elevate it to principal and see if it's a tool that could be offered for teachers there. So, but if there's a teacher super interested, we of course love to work with you and figure out ways to get it to you.
Yeah, I see a question coming through. Effectiveness of using this to coach. Well, I'm speaking from the experiencing of using it as a coaching tool this past year. So I am going to be talking about it, and there's some evidence, I guess you could say, in the slides. And you will be getting these slides at the end of the presentation, by the way, so you can look back and see all the resources that we've linked here. So I am a CTI reflective coach in my district, and I had about 8 teachers on my caseload last year. And when I first discovered the TeachFX app, I presented it to them as, hey, because I'm a tech coach and this is a new app, would you mind piloting this for me and seeing how it works and seeing if it's worthwhile? And 3 of them hopped on board right away and were like, sure, we'd love to help you, Ash. Like, no problem. We'll pilot it and see how it goes. And then they used it, shared their experience. And then a 4th teacher decided like she wanted to try it too, because she heard from the other 3, like how awesome it was. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these teachers and what they did, and how they used the app and how we work together in our coaching relationship. So the first teacher was Hannah. She teaches 7th grade ELA at one of our middle schools. And she, again, kind of like me and my teaching experience, I wanted to engage my students in more meaningful conversations that were more than 30 seconds long. So she did her first recording. And then after that first recording, she decided she needed to increase her student talk time and allow more think time after asking her questions. So what do you notice? This is just a couple of screenshots from some of the data that she shared with me. What do you notice between Hannah's first and second recordings? Just by taking a glimpse at this data, this information. And I will say she did not give me a screenshot of the think time during the second recording. So I reached out to her, but it's her summer break too. So she's like, I don't have it. No worries, no worries. So a lot more questions the second time. Yeah, and this is just surface level. Yes, she's asking more questions. More questions, more questions. And discussions in the classroom. Less think time, okay. So it's pretty obvious, right? But here is actually her insights. So when she saw this think time of 23 from the first recording, this was almost like a kudos for her. Like, I understand that giving them this extra think time is helping them come out with more well thought out responses than me just jumping in. And then with her questioning, her insights from her first, second, she actually went back and listened to the types of questions that she was asking that got her students responding. She says, for example, I asked, how would we first go about finding example? And what kind of quotes are we looking for? Rather than just those right there kinds of questions like, where is it in the text or whatnot? So she says that it paved a clear path, so she knew what she needed to work on with her students. There's a testimonial video of her. I'm not going to play it, but you can go back and watch her talking about her experience specifically with TeachFX later on. And again, this is what she said. It's giving her that detailed analysis of her lessons and gave her that new insight into her classroom dynamic. The second teacher is another middle school ELA. Since I was a former ELA teacher, it only makes sense that I coach mostly ELA teachers, so this is why you're seeing ELA. So she wanted to incorporate wait time and talk moves, so she did her first recording, and she realized I need to increase my group talk time and wait time and decrease the amount of time she was talking. So this is a screenshot of her word cloud from the first time she recorded. And she said, I noticed that the students were using more words about things they had been having side conversations about rather than the book we were discussing. Since the students didn't have supports during their conversations, they got distracted. So this helped her recognize, hey, I need to give my kids some academics conversation support tools. So she actually provided them this, and you can get a copy if you click on this image when you get the slides or the link. So it was a Talk Moves little one pager with some sentence stems, and she gave them a thought-provoking discussion question during the second time she recorded. And then she took a second screenshot the second time of that word cloud. And she said both words have words from the main question of the day, which was, they were reading The Maze Runner, and it's, do you think Ben should have been banished? Why? And by having that focus question, it required her students to take a stance, and using those sentence stems, the class was more focused. That was her reflection. And they also, I think this screenshot also was around Super Bowl. So you can see this, they were talking about the Super Bowl a little bit, but the main character of the book was Thomas. And so obviously this is what they were talking about. So that's positive. And this is the insights into her talk rate recording or ratios from the first recording to the second. So there's a little star at the bottom of your screen. I want you to drag it, and what areas in Heidi's talk ratios improved after her second recording? So what areas do we see improvement in? Those little stars moving all over the screen. So I love Pear Deck. Yeah, so her goal was to decrease the amount of time that she was spending talking in the class. So she's not at that perfect 30-30-30, like 10 ratio yet, but she did decrease the amount of time she was talking, and she was able to increase the amount of times her student was talking in groups. All right, and this is again her little blurb of testimony here. So she says, this is a huge one for me, especially after coming from schools where behaviors were such an issue. I also noticed that when class was given clear discussion goal with supporting sentence stems to reach higher levels of academic dialogue, negative student behaviors decreased. So win-win. The behaviors are coming down, the academic dialogue is increasing, that is a win. So the third teacher that I worked with is Heather. She actually works at the same school as Heidi, but Heather is a special education teacher, and she does a lot of co-teaching where she floats around from class to class, but she does have one period of the day where she has 6 students who are very intense in their behaviors, but not very academically engaged. It's like pulling teeth to get these kids to do anything. And so her goal was to implement some strategies to stimulate that academic discussion. And she saw after her first recording that she needed to scale back her teacher talk and ask more meaningful questions to engage students in those academic discussions. She saw that she was asking a lot of questions that elicited like one-word responses instead of questions that require students to elaborate. And she got that from listening back to her recording. So here again is her first recording and second recording talk ratios. This time I want you to drag the star to talk ratios that reveal where she may still need to work on. So first and second, what areas does she still need to work on based on this, what this data is revealing? Okay, stars everywhere here. So to me, the biggest thing that points out here is that even though this is a real small class, there's not a lot of group talk time happening. And maybe it's because it's such a small class, the recording's not able to pick up that group talk time. But yes, so some more student talk in general and less teacher talk. So she did decrease from first to second, but there's still some work to be done. And she is very aware of that. So teacher talk time, student talk time, group talk time, here was what her summary of kind of some things that we talked about in her reflection. She realized she needed to talk less, intentionally plan more activities that allow for students to interact with one another so that they can actually have that time to talk. And this is screenshots of her building upon student contribution. So this is where she was able to use the app to recognize her teaching strengths. So it's not just about looking at where we're weak and what we need to work on, but it's also like kudos to us, like what we're doing well. And she realized like she does a good job of building on what the students have to say. And then she does a good job of providing think time for her special education students to respond. So again, it helped her to recognize that that's one of her strengths. So again, this is her testimony. She realized she needed to plan more pair group activities so that they could interact and pre-plan to ask specific questions that are meaningful and relate to the essential question. And then the final teacher I worked with, this was the one that jumped on board at the end after she heard the other three in our group reflections share out about their use of the app. She teaches high school ELA and ASL. So understanding teacher and student talk time to create more effective lessons was her initial goal. And then after her first recording, she realized she needed to increase her group talk time. So this is a screenshot of her entire screen. What areas in Ashley's talk ratios improved after her second recording? If you can go ahead and, is that allowing you to drag? So we're seeing some movement towards the bottom with the group. So she improved her group talk time. She actually said, I was shocked to see that I only had a minute of group talking time. That seemed insane to me. During the second recording, she did see an increase for 5 minutes. So this is still an area that she wants to work on for next year. Again, additional insights that Ashley picked up on from using the app is on the, when you get the report analysis, TeachFX provides reflective questions. So it's almost as if you have an instructional coach there asking you what things to think about. So did you hear from a diverse range of students? How do you see students building confidence or taking risks, particularly more reluctant or emergent learners? Or what did you learn about how your students think? Did students make connections to help deepen their learning? So she appreciated those reflective questions that it provided. And then she also said it was helpful to listen back to the recordings because it forced her to ask herself questions like, well, how much did I talk? How long did I give them to think? How many times did I take their answers and adjust to make them think critically? So reflecting on her practice informed her next instructional moves. And then she found herself making efforts to push students to discuss together and gave them the driving questions to stimulate that discussion. Word clouds was another big bonus for Ashley too, because she decided to actually show these word clouds to her students. This was not a request from me or anything. She just on her own was like, hey, I'm going to show them this. And the kids picked up on the fact that they weren't really talking about what they were supposed to be talking about in class. So she used it as like an accountability tool with her students. So she said, seeing the visual helped them with holding our learning community accountable for academic talk in the classroom. So again, here's her little 1 sentence testimony. She used, in order to create more effective lessons to support students, to check in with myself and to foster student accountability in the classroom community. And all of those slides, by the way, have the audio of these teachers actually saying what's on the screen. And this is just an example of universal design for learning and the way you can create more accessibility for students. Don't forget about that cool audio feature in Google Slides. So Ashley's process, that's me, Ashley, not my teacher. This was the process that I used to coach with the TeachFX tool. So again, I presented it initially when I first discovered it as, hey, can you pilot this and let me know how it goes? And asked them to use one of their 2 free recordings to record and then meet with me and kind of share with me what the app produced for them. And so we had a coaching conversation. It was either in their classroom with them or virtually on a Google Meet. And the key here is these teachers were willingly and openly sharing the data with me. They were sharing their screen, or I was sitting beside them looking at their computer screen, and we were talking through it together. And I would not say this is something as a coach that you would ask a teacher to do the first week you're getting to know them. I had been working with these candidates for about 6 months before asking them to do this. So establishing that relationship with them first. But during our coaching conversations, TeachFX has a reflection protocol with some questions that you can use or the teachers can use by themselves. But these are kind of the general questions that I ask, like, what did you notice or what did you wonder? What did the data reveal, like about your teaching strengths and weaknesses? Okay, so based on this data, what is something that you want to improve with your teaching practice for the next time you do a recording? Let's brainstorm some ideas. What ideas do you have? And like help them think through what they wanted to do. Then they went back and recorded that second time, and we had another reflective conversation after that. So this was just my process. This is not, you know, set in stone the way you have to do it. This is just what I did, and it happened kind of organically. So we have a bonus video that you can watch later about using TeachFX and PLCs. Rosario, did you want to add anything about that?
No, I mean, we've just seen that it's a really powerful tool, of course, when the relationships and the trust is there to really collaborate, whether it's within the same content or grade level with your peers and colleagues in PLCs. And so this is just an example of one teacher who did this in high school math, and it's really awesome. And then this other piece here is just showing that even after one recording, teachers already begin to change their practice just based on like the awareness of how much they're talking. So we definitely see student talk increase the more that teachers use TeachFX.
So this is the QR code to have a free trial of TeachFX. You could also go to teachfx.com. So if you haven't done it already, I'm sure some of you have been little eager beavers and might have already gotten the app in your app store. But if you haven't already, go ahead and use your phone, download the app, go to teachfx.com and sign up for an account. Don't record a lesson yet. You get two free recordings, but after you log in to your TeachFX account, go to the TeachFX demo lessons that are there and take a look at all those different demo lessons and the types of information that is provided there. So you can see just kind of what it looks like and what you can expect from when you get your own report after that first recording. Does anyone still need me to leave the QR code up? All righty. Okay, so questions. You can either type them in the Pear Deck, or if you want to just speak to us, you can feel free to unmute.
So I see in the chat, Heidi asked, what are some of the costs associated with using this app? That's a really great question. So it really just depends on the scope of the implementation. And so we have various different types of implementation, but it's loosely based on a site-based license and how many teachers are going to be using that at that particular school or district. So if you have an idea in mind, I'd love to chat with you separately about what that might look like.
Yeah, so our district right now, I've been working with our professional development leader to determine if we can get it as just the coaches in our district so that we can use it on our own as a coaching tool. Again, it's a like teacher privacy kind of issue because it needs to really be the teacher's account and have them recording it rather than us recording it. But if they give us permission as coach to record a lesson, if we come in to observe, then we could use it that way. And again, that goes back to establishing a good coaching relationship with your candidates. And yes, so Mindy said that provide us feedback in the SCED. Yes, you can provide us feedback in the SCED. Also, just a short plug for IAQ. this is our inland area technology kind of network that's affiliated with the larger Q organization. It's free to join, and you get connected with other teachers who are using ed tech tools across San Bernardino and Riverside County. There's grant opportunities, conference opportunities. So if you are not part of IAQ, please sign up. I'll pop the flyer into the chat. So you can see how to join IAQ. I don't see any other questions in the pair deck. All right. So thank you all for joining us today to learn about TeachFX. And we'll hang around for a bit if there's anybody that has questions and wants to ask.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.